The office building stood tall and imposing, reflecting the midday sun off its glass windows. Inside, the hum of productivity was constant: keyboard clicks, phone conversations, the shuffling of papers. But amidst all this, a certain tension lingered in the air, thick with unspoken words and unresolved frustrations. At the heart of this corporate labyrinth was Marcus Knight, the CEO of Knight Industries, a tech giant that had risen rapidly to dominate the industry. He was a man of vision, intelligence, and poise, qualities that had earned him respect and admiration from the business world. But there was something else about Marcus that set him apart. He was black. This fact, for some, was a source of unease. Despite his achievements, Marcus had always known the challenges he faced weren't just professional, they were personal. In a world where corporate boardrooms were dominated by white faces, his position as a black CEO was often met with suspicion or, worse, subtle discrimination. But Marcus had risen above that. He had built his company from the ground up and had no intention of letting anyone undermine his success, regardless of their preconceived notions. It was on this particular morning that a man named Roger Carver, an engineer who had been with the company for nearly a decade, made the fatal mistake of underestimating Marcus. Roger had always been known as one of the most brilliant engineers at Knight Industries. His mind worked like a machine, and his ideas were often groundbreaking. But what Roger lacked was humility. He had an air of superiority, as though his technical prowess made him untouchable, above the rules, above the hierarchy of the company. He had always regarded Marcus with a sense of condescension, despite the fact that Marcus was his boss. To Roger, the notion that someone like Marcus, someone from a background so different from his own, could rise to the top was a perplexity. He often dismissed Marcus's leadership as a product of political correctness, as though his race had somehow played a role in his rise. It was a belief that was never spoken aloud but quietly festered in Roger's mind. On this particular day, Marcus called for a meeting to discuss a critical new project that could determine the company's future. The meeting was scheduled to take place in the executive conference room, a sleek, glass-walled space at the top of the building. As the time drew near, the participants gathered: executives, engineers, managers, and various stakeholders, all ready to discuss the direction the company would take. Roger, like the others, filed into the room, but there was something about today's meeting that felt different. He was about to learn that his assumptions, his arrogance, and his ignorance would have consequences he had never anticipated. The room fell silent as Marcus entered, his presence commanding attention. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his sharp features framed by neatly trimmed hair. His stride was purposeful as he took his seat at the head of the table. His gaze swept over the room, his piercing eyes stopping momentarily on each person, as if evaluating their readiness for the challenges ahead. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. "We have a lot to discuss today. The future of this company depends on the decisions we make in the coming months. Let's not waste time." Roger, who had been sitting near the back, rolled his eyes subtly as he leaned back in his chair. He didn't share the same urgency as Marcus. To him, the meeting felt more like a routine affair, just another task to check off before he could get back to his work. Marcus didn't miss the gesture. He knew Roger well enough to sense the disdain that lingered just beneath the surface. He wasn't surprised. Over the years, Roger had shown a penchant for speaking his mind, often in a manner that bordered on disrespectful. But this was different. Today, something fell off. As the meeting unfolded, it became clear that there was a fundamental disagreement about the direction of the new project. Marcus, ever the visionary, was advocating for a bold, innovative approach, one that would push the company into new markets and explore uncharted territory. But Roger, who had always prided himself on his technical knowledge, argued that the project scope was too ambitious. He believed they should play it safe, focusing on improving existing products rather than venturing into unknown territories. "I understand your concerns, Roger," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm, "but the market is shifting. We can't afford to stay stagnant. Innovation is the key to survival." Roger scoffed, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Innovation is all well and good, but we're not here to play some sort of high-stakes gamble. This isn't Silicon Valley. It's about practicality. We need to be realistic. The room grew quiet as the tension between the two men escalated. It wasn't just a disagreement about business strategy, it was personal. Roger's words dripped with a dismissive tone, as though Marcus's ideas were the fantasies of an outsider, not the vision of a CEO who had built the company from the ground up. Marcus paused for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly as he regarded Roger. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air. Everyone in the room could sense it. The tension was palpable. Roger, Marcus said, his tone now sharper, "You're entitled to your opinion, but this is my company, and it's my decision to make. I suggest you show some respect." Roger chuckled, the sound coming out as more of a mocking laugh than anything else. "Respect? You think I need to respect some corporate puppet? Someone who just got handed the CEO role because of his skin color?" The words hung in the air like a slap to the face. The room was silent. No one moved, no one breathed. They all stared at Roger, who had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Marcus's expression hardened, his jaw clenched as he stood up slowly. For a moment, the entire room held its breath. "Roger," Marcus began, his voice barely above a whisper, "you've just made a grave mistake." The sound of Marcus's voice seemed to snap everyone out of their stupor. There was a murmur among the employees, whispers exchanged behind hands, eyes darting nervously. They knew what was coming. Roger, completely unaware of the storm he had just unleashed, leaned back in his chair, a smug smile still playing on his lips. "What? You gonna fire me now or what?" Marcus didn't say another word. He turned to the door and opened it, stepping out into the hallway. A moment later, the door to the conference room opened again, and in walked Michael Hayes, the company's chief operating officer. "Roger Carver," Michael said, his voice steady, "you're fired. Effective immediately. Please gather your things and leave the premises." The words echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Roger's face drained of color. He stammered, his usual arrogance vanishing in an instant. "What? No, you can't. I've been here for 10 years. You can't just fire me like this." But Marcus's voice rang out from the doorway, cold and unyielding. "I just did," he said, "and I don't want to hear another word about it.